So now I'll discuss the various methods we'll use in order to get this information. First, we'll start with the document review. A document review basically gives an impression of how a program operates. And so basically we chose to do this because we feel it'll inform us with our evaluation process, and it'll give us a sense of what sort of methods we can use and questions that we might propose in our surveys. We're also going to use a mailed survey, and we decided to do this because it's a quick and easy way to get information, and we do intend on piloting the survey for comprehension. So an example of a question we intend to ask, and this would be for Canadians, would be, did you attend or partake in your local torch relay celebration? So basically we chose to do a mailed survey because we feel it'll give us the widest reach. We felt that if we used an internet or phone survey, we might be limited because of access. We don't know if the population is accessible via those methods. We do feel that if there's an issue with language, we will use a translator, especially with the French community. We will also be informed by population numbers, so we do intend on getting a sense of provincial and territorial population numbers to get a more representative sample. And with our mail survey, we do intend on using open-ended and closed-ended questions. And with that, we'll be able to get descriptives as well as group comparisons, and we can do a thematic analysis of the open-ended questions. Finally, we have key informant interviews. And key informant interviews are useful because it gives us a better understanding of impressions and experiences of people involved in the program. So we have two types of interviews. The first is a face-to-face, and we chose a face-to-face because it sort of establishes rapport with the stakeholders involved. So we intend on doing key informant interviews with VANOC, program officers, as well as the steering committee. And we don't need to interview all these individuals. And so what we intend to do is reach a saturation point, and at that point, we can stop the process. In regards to the minority groups, especially Aboriginal groups, we intend on using a liaison, who will be the person we contact, and they will go and talk with the groups on our behalf. So basically, this is a way for us to get opinions and perspectives as to, well, we can refine our questions accordingly based on, as we go along with our face-to-face interviews. And so an example of a question here would be, do you think that the plans for the relay were carried out? So this is a question we would propose to someone from the VANOC committee. We also chose telephone interviews, and the telephone interviews we feel will help us deal with time constraints. So for example, if someone is not able to do a face-to-face interview, a telephone interview is another option. So we would do this, for example, with members of the VANOC committee as well as program officers, and it would be similar to the face-to-face interview. So again, we would have open-ended and closed-ended questions, and this would allow for descriptive as well as group comparisons. So I'd now like to discuss some of the strengths and weaknesses of each of these methods. So with the document review, it provides a comprehensive and historical information. It's really good to use because the information already exists, and there's usually few biases about this information. At the same time, the information may be incomplete, access can be blocked to it, and it often does take time, and there can be biases in the reporting of information. We feel that with a document review, we can address some of these weaknesses and by talking to stakeholders that can hopefully fill us in on incomplete information. Next was the mail survey, which we intend to use with Canadian residents. So some of the strengths of a mail survey are that it can be completed anonymously, it's inexpensive to administer, it's easy to compare and analyze, and you can get a lot of data in a short amount of time. Potentially, we could have inaccurate feedback or recall. There are issues with wording of questions, and it can be impersonal. And it also doesn't get as much information as you would perhaps with an interview. But as I mentioned before, we do intend on piloting the survey for comprehension and wording, so hopefully that will address some of the weaknesses with this method. Finally, there are the interviews themselves. Some of the strengths are the range and depth of information you can possibly get. And as well, you can actually target the information you want. And you do establish a relationship with the person you're interviewing, and you can be flexible with the questions you ask. Some of the weaknesses, however, are that it's consuming and costly, and it can be hard to compare responses because of the flexibility with the questions. And of course, there's inaccurate recall as well. We do feel, however, that because we're using face-to-face and telephone interviews, one accommodates the other. So the weaknesses of a face-to-face we can address with a telephone. So for example, if we feel that a face-to-face is too time-consuming, we can use a telephone interview. So we propose to use quantitative and qualitative data analysis for the methods I just described. So as I mentioned, with the surveys and interviews, we do intend on using open-ended and closed-ended questions. And as I've mentioned before, we will be using descriptive statistics such as averages, as well as comparing groups. And with the surveys and the interviews, we will have open-ended questions as well. And with these questions, we intend on doing a thematic analysis. So the quantitative data will be analyzed using SPSS, and the qualitative data will be coded using NVivo. And now I'd like to pass it on to Melissa to discuss our budget.
Hello down there. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the timeline that we proposed. The RFP did not have a timeline in it, but we, with our expertise and knowledge, we've developed a timeline that consists of approximately 13 months. First of all, you can notice that we do plan to have monthly reports. So each month, one of the members from our team will meet with a representative from VANOC, and we will update these people on the activities of our evaluation. Also, you can see that we plan to have steering committee meetings. We hope to set up a steering committee, as mentioned earlier, that has key members from the different stakeholders. And this is really important to have, especially in the first couple of months, so that we know that we're on the right track and we're meeting the goals and objectives of this particular evaluation. Also, the document reviews need to be early on so that we can get we can get our feet wet with what this program is all about and really get a good knowledge base of what we're doing here. After that, of course, we'll have to start up with the interviews and the mail surveys. Those we think will take up most of the time. As you can see, they would start around month 2 or 3 and go on to the end of the project. Also, data analysis will happen at partway through our evaluation and also at the end. We'd like to have it partway through because this sort of gives us an idea of where we stand and what sort of trends we're looking at and if our data is accurate and clean. Finally, as the RFP said, they would like us to present a draft report and a final report towards the end of the evaluation. Quickly, I just want to address the budget. However, we were not given a budget by the RFP, but we have developed a rough estimate of about $40,000, the most of which would be used up in the mail surveys, because we hope to do a national wide scope here. Potential challenges. This is a wide geographical scope. Therefore, we need to use a mixed method approach, and we also need to be quite flexible in our evaluation. We need to send out more surveys than we could need because we need to make sure that the non-response bias or people who are not responding to these mail-out surveys are included. There's cultural and language barriers, so we need to make sure collaboration is key here. There's ethical issues working with minority populations, so again, collaboration is key. We need to make sure we make informed decisions and protocols. And also, this is an outcome evaluation that may lead to retrospective data and possible hindsight bias. We need to be very conscious of this, and therefore we need to incorporate methods such as document reviews and the analysis of television ratings. So overall, this evaluation is definitely needed. Mixed method is best. Our timeline demonstrates this is quite feasible, and as our ICE consulting team likes to promote, collaboration is key. So we'd like to thank Memorial University, the Canadian Evaluation Society and the conference, and our coach, who unfortunately could not be here today with us, Dr. Sandra McDonald. So we'd like to open up the floor now to questions and comments.
Well, thank you very much.